Hey, what's up, Geekscapists? Welcome to our brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host. And if this is your first Geekscape, well, I hope it's not. I hope you were like, wow, that Geekscape stuff is so good. I got to come back for more. And then I hope you want to go tell your friends about it by hitting that little share button on whatever podcatcher you're listening to this on. Or maybe you're watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, and you hit our share button there and you say, hey, let's get our friends in on this. You still got time to do that if you're watching live, because we have a pretty damn good episode. Like we do it every week. We talk some pop culture, movies, video games, comic books, TV. And we got a pretty damn good one here for you today. This week, we got John C. Lyons. This is a dude who, let me tell you, before there was a Geekscape, I met John over the internet because my film played a horror film festival in his neck of the woods. He went to see it. He sent me an email. We became email friends. Do y'all have email friends, or is it just this TikTok or whatever the kids have today, the Instagram DMs? Is that what y'all got now? We used to be email friends back in the olden days, and then we became Facebook friends. That's the evolution of email friends, is Facebook friends. And then John went and made a movie that it comes out this week, and you should go watch it, especially if you're a horror fan. And we're going to talk about it. It's called Unearth. We're going to have John here on the show here in a bit to talk about Unearth and putting it together, and maybe a little bit more. So we have a damn good show. Joining me this week, too, is Matt Kelly of the Horror Movie Night podcast. I figure we have a horror director on the show talking about a horror movie. Jonathan London, as we know, even though he runs the Geekscape whole enchilada, he is a mile wide and an inch deep when it comes to the geek topic. So let's get a specialist for the horror guest. Let's get Matt Kelly of the Horror Movie Night podcast. It's also a featured podcast here on the Geekscape network, and let's have him on there. But Big Yanks is over here on Twitch, and he's already jumped in to say, you know what, I have Grindr friends. So he went email friends, Facebook friends, Grindr friends. He didn't even stop at MySpace or any of that other stuff. He says, let's grind it up, baby. So that's what's going on here. I got to tell you, I watched a sci-fi movie over the 4th of July. I got to tell you, I hope you all have your fingers still. I think people go into 4th of July, they wake up on 4th of July morning, they're like, oh man, I love having all 10 fingers. And I think some of them, by the time they put their heads to sleep that night, don't have all 10 fingers. But I hope you have all 10 fingers. I hope you made it through 4th of July with all 10 fingers. But obviously Independence Day is like the 4th of July movie, at least for me. I saw Independence Day, came out in 96, and I saw it twice in theaters. Had to go back for more Independence Day after I watched it the first time. It was fun. And obviously, you know, former Geekscape guest Dean Devlin wrote and produced Independence Day. So shout out there. But what did I watch? I watched this new movie, which I liked in the same way I like Independence Day. I watched this Tomorrow War. Do you all know about the Tomorrow War? The Tomorrow War is this Chris Pratt movie. And is this thing based on a book, Geekscapists? Can y'all jump in the chat and let me know if this thing is based on a book or something? The Tomorrow War has Chris Pratt, and he's like he's a scientist. He's gonna work he wants to get a job in a government lab. He's an ex-military guy, and he looks up in modern day 2021, 2022, and the entire world suddenly gets like, quote unquote, invaded by humans from 30 years in the future who are like, hey, hate to break it to y'all, hope you're enjoying the World Cup, but in about 30 years, we are about to be exterminated by invading aliens. So we need humans from 2021, 22 to come 30 years in the future and fight in the Tomorrow War against these aliens, because we just don't have enough humans anymore. They hate us. So Chris Pratt gets sucked 30 years in the future to fight in the Tomorrow War. And let's just admit, it's a silly concept. But I got to tell you, I had a lot of fun watching it. To me, it felt like a Robert Heinlein book. It felt like a mix of like Tunnel in the Sky. I don't know if you read a lot of Robert Heinlein. It has obviously some Starship Troopers stuff going on there because they're fighting a giant swarming bug-like army. So there's that. So a lot of Robert Heinlein stuff going on in it. But it also felt like, I don't know if y'all remember this video game on the PS2, maybe the PS3. It was definitely on the PS Vita. Resistance Fall of Man. It reminded me of that game too, where you're like fighting in basically like abandoned cities, a bunch of aliens. But listen, the movie's not going to win any Oscars. All right, it's not going to win any awards. Maybe effects. I'm just telling you, it's a fun movie. If you like Independence Day, if you like those kind of movies, watch it. I don't like using the word guilty pleasure around here. You shouldn't feel guilty for enjoying what you enjoy, right? I mean, Matt Kelly can tell you that. He'll be on the show here pretty soon, but I'm gonna go ahead and give the Tomorrow War my endorsement because I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. And you know what? It was an action sci-fi movie that Heidi stuck with the entire time. She was into the Tomorrow War. And Chris Pratt wasn't shirtless for a lot of it. So it had to be the story, it had to be the action, it had to be the fun. So there's my little endorsement for the week for y'all. Get that Tomorrow War. It's on Amazon, so you should be able to find it pretty easily there on that one. Have fun with that. Looking at your comments, and Big Gank says, I call them popcorn flicks. Okay, great. Well, tell that to your grinder friends, Big Ginks. Right, enough of that. Speaking of the Tomorrow War, I usually fight a daily war with this next person. This is Matt Kelly of the Horror Movie Night podcast. As we know him, he's Matt of Easttown. We've talked on the podcast that they shot Mayor of Easttown in and around Matt's current neighborhood where he chose to buy a house. And then the show came on where there's murders everywhere. So yeah, there you go, Matt. Hope the daughter murders haven't happened a whole lot in your neighborhood recently.
No,
okay.
It's been wonderful. It's great over here. Good to see you, John.
It's good to see you, buddy. You know what? This is Geekscape 599, Matt. Do we know what we're doing for Geekscape 600 next week? The big Geekscape 600?
I mean, I know that I've got nothing going on July 16th. And I know that we're starting a pretty important campaign on that day.
We are. We're starting a blood drive.
So I feel like maybe July 16th at, I don't know, around maybe 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Maybe like Horror Movie Night will pop on for a little bit. Maybe a little bit of Christmas 365, just to warm the audience up, get them ready for Geekscape 600 while we talk about the blood drive throughout the few hours that we're setting the stage for you. I think that could be a fun Geekscape 600. Does that work for you?
Yeah, let's have a couple show live stream. You know, it'd be like a rock and roll concert where you have like openers and then you have the main event. I hate calling myself the main event because I feel like Geekscape is a whole collective. Geekscape's like a collective. Geekscape is a community. But
yeah, usually the best band or podcast goes last, but you know, Christmas 365 and Horror Movie Night will gift that slot to you because it's your big 600.
Listen, are there does Christmas 365 have 365 subscribers? Like, has it been listened to 365 times? Talk to me about this.
Yeah,
or I'll cancel the hell out of it right now. If it doesn't have 365 subscribers, I will cancel it right now.
We actually hit our record highest numbers this month, beating out our December numbers, which is insane.
Whoa. Well, there you go, Matt. Christmas in June. Enjoy it.
It really, right. I think it was because we covered the final episode of Glow recently, which was a Christmas episode. You know, we just did an episode on this BBC show, Inside Number 9. Have you ever seen this? It's like a...
No, I just celebrated the 4th of July. I'm not going to listen to. I'm not going to watch no BBC show. Come on now. Sam would come down my chimney. If you're talking about Christmas, Sam would come right down my chimney and then go put something up my chimney. If you know what I'm saying.
But yeah, no, they were kind of like a slightly more fun, tongue-in-cheek Black Mirror type show.
Okay.
But this episode, all I'll say for the setup, I highly recommend it. You can get it with BritBox on Amazon Prime. But it's that you're watching what seems to be a old TV special about Krampus from the 70s with the director's commentary on. And it gets increasingly more weird from that point.
I'm intrigued. And BritBox is like if you access like HBO through Amazon Prime, it's like doing that. Like I don't know what BritBox is.
Like all the BBC stuff. So you get all the British stuff. So
but you have to subscribe to it.
Through Amazon Prime, but you get a 7-day free trial that you can cancel if you just want to watch this one episode. It's season 3. It's called The Devil of Christmas.
Yeah, that'll be
highly recommend.
That's the streaming equivalent of pouring their tea into the harbor. Is like 7 days free and then peace.
Yeah.
Cut them off.
So actually, it's the most American thing you can do to get that free 7 days. watch everything you need to watch, and then cut it before they get a penny.
Sorry, BBC, not in my household. You know what? You should have fought harder. You should have taxed higher. You should have taxed like what they're taxing us now. You know?
Yeah, that really came back on us in a bad way, didn't it?
Yeah. The British are laughing. They're like, they'll tax themselves higher. Okay, so you're in Pennsylvania. I think our guest, Mr. John C. Lyons, I don't want to.
You're gonna call him John C. Riley before this thing is over.
No. I was gonna make his graphic, and you're gonna say John Lyons, but then I was like, no. He in every correspondence I've had with him for over 15 years, it's been John C. Lyons.
Yeah. Well, he's
and
up
I think
in Erie, Pennsylvania.
He's in Erie.
Than me.
But
he's
is it the Erie in
New York?
Hold on, Matt. Is it the Erie in Pennsylvania? Because there might be other Eries. There's
no,
clearly Erie, Indiana.
He either said that he's in Erie, Pennsylvania, or he's calling one of us Pa. So I think he's in Pennsylvania.
All right. You know what? The best way to settle this is let's just have him on the show.
Yeah, let's clear it up.
John, we got a couple questions for you. All right.
Yes.
None of them have anything to do with filmmaking. Is the John C. thing like, hey, I was here first in the same way that I at times call myself J-Lo and I'm not going to give it up? She might as well just be Jenny from the block as far as I'm concerned, because I'm the J-Lo here.
That's a really good point. My grandfather went by it, and I was named kind of after him, so I kept it going. The John C.
Okay, but when this John C. Reilly guy started showing up in like the Paul Anderson movies and this and that, and I don't mean Paul Anderson like Event Horizon, I mean P.T. Anderson. Like, were you like, hold up, not in my neighborhood?
No, I appreciate it.
Have you met John C. Reilly?
No.
To discuss something, like maybe weekends?
I mean, it's like a secret club thing, so I'm not, it's kind of like Fight Club. The less said, the better, I think.
Okay, so I'm Jonathan David. John D just sounds stupid.
Yeah.
John D. London.
Yeah, that's why I don't go by Matt J. Kelly.
What's your middle name, Matt?
James. Got my dad's first name as my middle name.
No, you'd have to be Matty James.
Yeah.
So listen, if your band Off the Wall had hit big, I would have had you would have changed your name to Matty James. So people are like, oh, my favorite in the band is Matty James.
The most confusing thing was that there is, again, I mean, we'll hint at this, that there's a Patreon on the horizon. If you guys can get us to $200 a month, Jonathan's going to sit through the entire Off the Wall record, which does feature a rap track by me where I rap under the name Matty G, which the G stands for literally nothing. It just seemed appropriate.
Geekscape is, I've already said clearly on the show that the Patreon does not go to me. Not a single cent of the Patreon goes to me. It goes to this guy, Matt Kelly, who does me the service of running our Geekscape podcast network. And I don't, this dude is like, I think I'm going to quit my full-time job. I was like, not so fast, Matt. I don't know. But this is part of his like multi-tiered, I don't know what it is, but he's going to try and stay off the streets. He just bought a house. He bought a house in Murdersville there at Easttown. And we're going to try and help him out. So the Patreon does not go to me. Don't even think about it. But yeah, I will listen to Matt's high school band. I'll do it live. I'll have the blood coming out of my ears from one of these very headphones if you help Matt out on the Patreon. But we'll talk about that later. Now we're talking to John
Matt,
C.
Great singing voice on the theme song for the show. Great.
Oh, no, that is not me. That is someone way better at singing than me. I believe, is that Chris or Steve singing that?
I think that is Steve from Punchline. It could actually be John Bellin, who used to be in Punchline.
Oh, that would make more sense.
I think it might be John Bellin, who is...
He's got that Gene the Werewolf.
He is Gene the Werewolf.
Vocal, yeah.
If y'all don't know Gene the Werewolf is fantastic. And they're definitely like a rock. They're straight up rock and roll. Like they opened for... I think he opened for...
They opened for The Darkness once.
Yeah, so that pretty much says it. Okay, so... a lot of people coming in saying like Elena, your friend Elena on YouTube says he's totally Erie PA, like don't play, like he's Erie PA. And Jim Morton says John C.
There we go.
Yep. Oh yeah, he may have thought you're John C. And then Chris Robinson, who's a very loyal Geekscape, says, "Did you say only $200?" He just wants to inflict pain on me, and it's fine. We're here for it.
Pays a couple bills. That's fine.
Ain't paying my bills, man. It's paying your bills. All right. So John. Personal histories.
Yeah.
we never met in person until I saw you here at the Unearth screening that we had in Los Angeles about 2 months ago. Is that correct? We never met in person.
Yeah, we had never met in person until the pandemic, until we opened the theater at the in April. We're still in it, right?
We're still pretty much in it. Go get your vaccines, folks. But I think your film was the first film that I saw back in a theater, and I wore a mask. I sat next to my friend Andy Rattinger, and
Thank you.
I it just felt great to sit back in a theater after over a year, and only I think one of my friends' movies would have gotten me back in the theater early. Now, of course,
Wow.
I had been vaccinated, but of course, like there was some trepidation about being in a theater. How are they going to handle it? I think theaters have been handling it well. There's social distancing and this and that. But your movie was the first one that I was like, yeah, I gotta come out and support my guy.
Man, thank you so much for that. I'm so glad we got that opportunity.
Well, John, we met because I put Gay by Dawn in the Erie, PA Horror Film Festival.
The Erie Horror Fest.
Erie Horror Fest, and you had a film in the festival as well, or you were helping run the festival. What was going on there?
That's a good question. What year did Gay by Dawn come out?
I think it would have been 2005.
Although you played in festivals for like 2 years, didn't you? You were in festivals for a long time.
It wouldn't stop. I got requests for a long time, like, hey, I saw this in Florida, we should play it. Hey, I saw this at Dwayne, I want to play it. And I just said, okay, like, play the movie. It's your problem now. Like I ain't gonna be there in person. Threats of violence, I sidestepped those by just not showing up.
How many did you go to before you were like, okay, now I'm not going anymore?
Well, I actually had trepidation. Like, in all seriousness, I had trepidation because making a comedy called Gay by Dawn, it was like, there's the horror fans who I knew would like it, and I believed that the gay audiences would like it, but it was a lot of swing and miss until it played festivals like Woodstock, and then Florida when it played Florida Film Festival's midnight slot, it was like a dam broke, and the two audiences that I thought would like it, the gay festivals and the horror festivals, started requesting it, and they requested it for the next 2 years. Awesome. It got optioned. It was a silly ride for Gay by Dawn, and I still say things like, should we make a feature out of it? I would love to make a feature out of Gay by Dawn. My producer would murder me, but I'm into it. And as it says right here in the comments, my friend Sean Neal says Gay by Dawn has the best theme song ever. A band called Loincloth, which is really just rearranged members of Dynamite Boy, Sean being the lead singer and lead guitarist. And I think Sean's going to make some music for my next project, which we've started to cast. And so there's a teaser there. I don't know if Loincloth is going to return, but maybe we make a Gay by Dawn feature. Don't not tell my producer about it, and Loincloth returns. And I think if I want to make the movie, and if we make it, I think what was cool about watching Unearth, John, was seeing how y'all just put this film together like any which way you could, because you're in a similar situation to me, that you're an adjunct professor, I believe, or you're a professor at times, like I am, and we do some editing work, we do some filmmaking work, we do some stuff like online, and then we're just kind of staying creative and all these different plates spinning just to have fun. I love doing this, but you still want to make a movie. How did y'all start putting together Unearth? And like, it kind of had a bit of a long road, or was it kind of quick when y'all started the crowdfunding?
Just a short 8-year road.
Oh, why? We don't have too many of those on this planet. What are we doing?
I mean, you have to be kind of insane, right, to be a filmmaker.
I agree with you, brother.
8 years. I'm sure Matt, can relate to the story.
I
too.
just watch
you're
them.
Crazy.
Okay. Matt's like, what's taking so long for these movies to come onto my Blu-ray player?
Yeah, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I don't know, Sleepaway Camp looked like it took 2 weeks. I don't know why you need 8 years. That movie's perfect.
And John, what I think is cool about Unearth is that it is a horror film about fracking. It's about more than fracking, and I'll tell you what I liked about the movie a lot. I'm a big lefty liberal. It's no surprise to any of the Geekscapists, but when it comes down to it, what I thought was really cool about Unearth was I actually liked the farm drama a lot. Before we even get into the horror elements, there was a lot going on there about selling family farms to factory farming, but it didn't really have much to do with the fracking element yet. I actually felt like you got us really entrenched in the family dramas pretty well. Like Marc Blucas from Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a father, and he's got this farm that he's like, you know what, it ain't doing too well, and we've had some hardships. I may need to sell this thing. And meanwhile, you have Adrienne Barbeau, who's we all know her for, I mean, come on, Swamp Thing, The Fog. Like she is horror royalty. That you got Adrienne Barbeau in this movie, and she has a farm, and she's like, no. Like, if your crops are good, you got to stick it out. But if you sell that land, we're neighbors. And if you sell the land to this organization that's just going to put in a fracking drill, you're fracking us all over because I'm your neighbor, and the whole land will die. Which is the beginning of the horror movie, because it's a little bit of a monkey's paw, right? You get the money to save your farm, but then who knows what lies beneath.
Absolutely.
How did this come to you, John? And may I say, not even, you co-directed the film, but you co-wrote the film. But when you and Dorota, your co-director,
yes, Dorota Swies.
How'd y'all come up with this? What is this?
So it started after I saw a couple documentaries that really hit close to home. They were Matt might have seen these because they're PA based, but if not, definitely check them out. There's Gasland, which I'm sure is the one everybody's heard of.
Yeah, where they light the faucet water on fire.
Yeah, which
I think
everybody remembers that from the movie. I think, that's a very real problem, and we're ruining the water in our state.
And also PA base is Matt. Remember Nick Gregorio and that band of comedians who all went to Drexel University?
Yeah, they did the Happy Birthday Harris Moulton and Green.
Their DP Matt is who shot Gasland.
Oh, look at
that. So let's keep it in. They've been on Geekscape as well. It's kind of weird. Small. You know what? You do anything 15 years enough, you're gonna run into people.
Right.
so
it was Gasland, and then it was Triple Divide. Gasland was kind of like my gateway into the situation, and then Triple Divide really went deeper and kind of more specific and showed multiple examples of what's going on in the state and why, and because of the deregulation and stuff. So those really scared me quite a bit, and then really pissed me off. And that's when I started outlining the script and then working on the script. And then I don't know if you want to go through the whole story, but it was a Kickstarter. In 2015, we did a Kickstarter with a much lower budget. And it was successful. We were 150% funded. But then Marc Blucas came on board, and Allison McAtee came on board, and Dorota and I were like, okay, maybe we, because there were 250 people across the world at that point that had went in on the Kickstarter, and people seemed to be really fired up about the idea. And so we said, you know what, let's go all in and raise the budget, hire all professional cast and crew, and let's see if we can raise the money for that. And that, kind of to your point, Matt, that's why it takes a long time, because unless you have a rich uncle,
So I have a question for you just about, obviously the fracking totally makes sense on a farm. That's a good starting point. But as a horror fan as well, I feel like in the last maybe 10 or 15 years, we've gotten a lot less of horror films that take place in that type of setting. I think in the 80s you had Critters, which almost entirely takes place at a farm. All the Children of the Corn movies, the first Cursed movie comes to mind. Were you a fan of those old 80s films too, where that was a very popular set for the 80s that kind of went away once you kind of got into the 1996 Scream slasher era, where now it's kids in rich mansions and in like gentrified suburbs.
Right, like middle class horror in the
Yeah.
90s, right? I have to say that's probably when I first started getting into horror, is then, and even much later. I wasn't a huge horror fan. I've become and have watched quite a bit since working on Unearth. But I probably the 90s, probably with the screams and stuff like that is when I think you
That
do
was my
make a
gateway.
good point. Okay, yeah,
Scream was your gateway?
Gateway was, so there's a video that's coming to the Geekscape network on the YouTube channel very soon about the movie Frighteners, because Frighteners was the first horror film that I watched where I was like, I want more of this. And my cousin was like, if you can watch Frighteners, you can watch Scream. And he sat me down and showed me Scream. And when I walked away from Scream, I was like, I'm going to go to the video store and I'm going to alphabetically rent every single film that's in the horror section throughout the entire summer. And I
what summer was that, Matt? If I were to build a time machine and stop this before it starts.
It's too late, but if you were going to try, it would have been the summer of 7th grade. Okay. So that would have put me, I want to say that would be 1998.
Okay.
There was
you are now my tomorrow war. I'm going to go back in time to stop the war before it begins. Yeah.
I may have indirectly shut down a mom and pop's video store with my efforts, because I never told you that. Wait, I've never told you the story. Okay.
No, so, we just talked about factory farms shutting down like mom and pop farms, and you're sitting...
That's not important. I destroyed a mom and pop's video store. So
what did you do?
That started Blockbuster.
Yeah, so like when you would go into a video store, we'll even use Blockbuster as an example because it was the same type of deal. You'd walk in and they'd have all the new movies. And if you rented one of the new movies, it was like a 2-day rental. Sure. But if you went to like the older movies, it was a 5-day rental, right? We all remember this. Mm-hmm. So at this particular video store, if you rented a 5-day rental and you returned it the next day, you got a free rental. Well, what I discovered that summer was if that free rental was a 5-day rental and you return that the next day, the system didn't know that it was a free rental and it would just roll over into another free rental.
Wow. Matt, you just rented one movie and then watched hundreds for free.
For an entire summer, yeah.
Matt, that was the streaming model. I'm not mad at you. That mom and pop shop could have been rich. They could have been like, you know what? If we just get somebody to pay once a month and get all these people to pay once a month and just let them watch as many movies as they want, those idiots. And they could have been Netflix.
I carry a lot of guilt for the fact that I did that. But the flip side is like, if a 13-year-old kid was able to crack that code, I'm sure there was some 20 and 30-year-olds who also cracked that code.
It wasn't Blockbuster that cracked that one because they turned Netflix down. They're like, how is this going to work? Matt, this is for a different episode, but I'd like for you to, like, at one point on Geekscape, produce the chart that shows the tiered list of all the things you actually feel guilt for in your life. And we should go through that on a Geekscape special and be
I'll work on that. I'll start piecing that together.
Shutting down the mom and pop store. Like, it seems like every time I have you on the show, you're like, one of the things I feel guilty about. And I'm like, man, this guy carries a lot.
I mean, I'm not sure if you watched any of the MTV stream, but I told AJ the story of how I used to call my friends randomly to ask what their top 5 favorite musicians were. And then at the end of the year, I would tell them based on the survey results what their favorite band actually is. So for a year of asking them that question.
Okay, so John, talk about this movie. There's no way I'm getting into that. That is a can of worms that he's been carrying for 30 plus years. And that is, I'm sorry, folks. We try and keep the show to an hour. I'm not doing that.
We got a lot to unpack here, John.
Oh, man.
I was told this was a therapy session. Was I incorrect?
Geekscape is Katie will be back for episode 600. So John, here's a question.
Yeah.
Did you double dip these investors from your first, and how did you do that? I mean, I'm just asking as a filmmaker who's done crowdfunding before. How did you? I mean, is that what you did? You I think you were leading it to it. Once you've attached Marc Blucas, once you have a couple people, more people attached. Once you're starting to look at wanting to do a bigger budget, low budget union, whatever you want to do. Did you then go to those people who you now had access to through your successful Kickstarter and double dip them into another crowdfund campaign that had wider reach?
Yeah, I did not, and I didn't want to.
I was gonna say, like, if you had done that, that would have been a miraculous miracle. Like, that would have been
Yeah.
I don't know how you could have done that,
We've
because
kind of carried them along through the whole process over the last, 6 years. Like, these
sure,
people are amazing. That, it's kind of one of those things that, you go in on good Kickstarters and bad Kickstarters, right? I feel like the bad ones are when I back a movie, I don't hear anything from the filmmaker, even when I see that the film is on Amazon, right? Like, and out there available, and you're like, what the hell, man? Like,
Mhm.
I backed this movie. Like, with us, we always set out to be a goal with our Kickstarter backers and with our investors. Like, I have a meeting with our investors every month ever since they've come on board, which has now been years. And with the Kickstarter backers, it's like regular updates to let them know, hey, we have decided that this is an opportunity to make a bigger film. So we're going to use the initial Kickstarter campaign to shoot a proof of concept, which is what we did. And we're going to use this 5-minute proof of concept to prove like the level that we can get this film at, which is going to be, exceed quite a bit what we were shooting. Like, before, we were just going to shoot on a DSLR, like a,
Sure,
Canon
sure, any which way you can,
5D
yeah,
Mark III.
any
Yeah.
which way but loose.
Yes. And
It's
now it was kind of like, oh, here's what your money's going to go towards, and this way we're going to attract a bigger budget. We're going to have a bigger chance of success, have bigger names attached to the film. And that's ultimately what we did. I mean, we raised $15,000 on Kickstarter. There's no way you get Adrienne Barbeau and Marc Blucas in your movie. Like,
I don't think without asking for a lot of outside help, I don't think you get a movie for 15 grand. Like, especially not a movie that has the level of effects that y'all have. Like, there are some really good effects there. And
thank you.
And I mean, your movie, in writing it, did it also affect the script? Because once you started realizing that you wanted to raise the ceiling on your production, you probably went back and said, okay, well, if we're going to make some room in the production budget, I think we should start exploring some more of those ideas, not just effects wise, but narratively.
Yeah, you're totally right. It was kind of like it opened the scope up a little bit. I mean, I can't say that
You don't want to go
raised-
nuts. Yes, you don't want to go nuts.
You don't want to write way beyond your means, but a little beyond your means for sure. And then we also, like, late in the process, brought in Kelsey Goldberg too, who helped, because there's a lot of women's voices in the script, and I didn't want to be that guy that's writing all these women characters and get something wrong. So
Sure.
Brought her in to like do the final polish and make everything as cohesive as possible. And but yeah, there's definitely things got shuffled and moved around, and even on set, because we only shot in 18 days. We shot in 3 weeks. So there was a lot of like lopping stuff off because we're running out of time. Even on like 12 hours a day, it's like 18 days is nuts.
But how did you, because I don't recall co-directing too much. I mean, obviously I like to surround myself with creative people, and my producers are creative, my co-writers are creative, all the people I like. Creative people will only help the project. But how did you and Dorota decide those things on set when you started saying, hey, we got to start making some hard decisions here? That's a very aggressive schedule. I'm guessing you had Sundays off, or maybe weekends off at most.
Sundays,
But for the most part, you shot that in a 3-week chunk.
Yep, 6, 6, and 6.
And so when this stuff starts, when y'all have your Sunday meetings of like, okay, here's the state of the union. This is what we got in 6 days that we really needed 8 days for. What do we have to cut in this next week to get back online? Right. How do we break the bone to reset it going into our next stretch? How did y'all, if you had disagreements, how did y'all decide them?
I mean, it's going back to filmmakers are crazy. It's crazy, and you need like a crew and a cast that are just as crazy as you and supportive, because otherwise, mutiny, and then you've got a real issue.
Were there? I mean, I'm guessing there were some stressful times.
A lot, a lot.
Right.
As far as Dorota and I, we fit well because we back each other up. We have each other's backs. Dorota focuses on camera and lighting and kind of the technical aspects, and then I work kind of with the cast and the actors. But then once one of us feels like moving on, then it's kind of like check with the other one, and usually it's make sure that Dorota is like the like quality control champion.
Yeah.
So
we got that, right?
Yeah,
like we got that.
I think we got that. No, okay, no? All right, we'll do it again.
Right. Okay. There was a camera hiccup. All right. No. Again, what I said, I feel like the movie is in 2 halves, not in 3 acts for the most part. Do you understand what I say when I say that? Because the first half of this movie, Geekscape, is just
pre-drilling and post.
Yeah, there's pre-drilling and post-drilling. Like you set up this movie, and I really like this family drama stuff going on in the first half. I'm like, oh, these characters are interesting. These are realistic stakes. And then when you see that financially, they're going to get forced to do something drastic, and probably lie to each other about having done it.
But hopefully you understand the motivation. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. You don't blame anybody for anything. You just it's pretty safe to be sitting in a movie theater and not have a family to support or a farm to support, and be like, man, you're making the wrong decision, because you're just going to leave the movie theater. But I get it. Like Marc Blucas's character, who has daughters to support and a farm to run by himself,
right.
And he has a different life he may want. Yeah. He's got a failing business. Yeah, it's easy for me to be in the theater and be like, don't like that. Nope. Don't be selling your farm, man. They're going to get that fracking in there, and then all sorts of creepiness is going to come out of that ground and make you infected, and you're going to be nasty. You'll be dripping goo by the end of this movie. You don't want to be selling none of that. It's easy for me to say, but I feel like y'all handled that really well. And then obviously the movie's in 2 halves. Once the drilling starts, so, people start don't drink that water.
Yeah.
Don't be drinking that water.
To your point, I mean, that was always like so important. I don't know if Matt feels the same way, but I kind of feel like the horror films that stick with me, that I kind of list as my favorites, they're all for the most part like character driven, so that you spend time. Maybe Matt's not the same.
Maybe. I mean, one of my favorite horror movies of all time is Alligators, so I don't really know if that's character driven, but
it depends on if you're an alligator or not.
Yeah, that's true. I really do relate to the alligator.
I'm just hungry. And I have a bad apartment. That's the sewer.
No, I agree. I think that the ones that you don't forget for good reasons, the ones that you love because they're Friday the 13th 5, A New Beginning, and you just love the guy with his damn enchiladas, like that resonates for one reason. But something like like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it takes a good 45 minutes where you're just hanging out with these teenagers and everything just seems slightly off, but you have a suspicion because the movie's called Texas Chainsaw Massacre why it feels like it's off. But like until what I still consider to be one of the greatest reveals in any horror movie, when they walk into that house and that metal door throws open and you see Leatherface for the first time, you're just like, oh, shit has gone wrong.
Like, okay, this has changed.
See, now you guys are from Pennsylvania. Growing up in Texas, I was like, oh, that's just like going to visit the neighbors.
Have you? Because I know you're from Austin, John, and I go there for Fantastic Fest. So one of the times that I went there, I made the trip to the barbecue place that they have at the gas station from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Have you?
I've never been I've been to the house. That's like a tourist attraction, driving past the house, but not the gas station.
Yeah, if you go to the gas station, they have a bunch of the old props, including the original van is still out there. But when you walk
That's cooler.
inside,
That's cooler than driving past the house. In my
oh, for
opinion.
sure. You
Yeah.
walk inside, it's filled with memorabilia from the whole franchise. But yeah,
Wow.
they just make barbecue ribs, and you can just get a plate of ribs to go home, which is great because it's a cannibalism movie. So it
I
really-
don't know. I don't know if I'd be in the mood for that. Oh, wow.
I went on the trip that they did for that, and I feel so bad because I cannot remember this dude's last name, but there was an older gentleman that was on this bus ride, and I'm like, it feels weird that this guy is like, it's a bunch of like 20-year-olds and this guy. So I started talking to him because we were on a bus. It was like an hour bus drive to this place, and he's like, yeah, I've always been a fan of these types of horror films ever since I used to make some. And I'm like, oh, you made some horror movies? He's like, yeah. He's like, I made Maniac Cop, or he's like, I made Maniac, and I made Uncle Sam was one of mine. And I'm like,
He
oh
made
my
the
God, this is
original.
William. It starts with an S. I can't remember his last name.
Wow.
It's gonna drive me nuts.
In that first Maniac, that's like all told in a POV. That was his movie. Am
I
I right
don't-
with that? Maniac was an all
No,
POV
the
movie.
remake was all in
Okay.
a POV.
But yeah, I knew that it was a remake. I didn't know if the original was POV as well.
William Lungston. It was William Lungston,
And he was just hanging out, being like, "How are these ribs?"
Yeah, he made Maniac, Maniac Cop, Maniac Cop 2, Maniac Cop 3, and then he made Uncle Sam was his last movie with the holographic cover where
That's incredible.
it was the I Want You Uncle Sam poster on one side, and then when you turned it, the face became a zombie face and said "to die" across.
I remember it
Nice.
very well. Blockbuster wouldn't carry that, but the mom and pop shops would. I was just in a shop on Saturday. Matt, you would love this when you come back to LA. We know that they're pretty much extinct now, but the independent video stores, there's one in South Pasadena next to this place we went to on Saturday we went to a place called Republic of Lucha because my brother is obviously a wrestler. Yeah, so it's next to Republic of Lucha, which is a cool store. They've got a lot of Lucha Libre stuff, a lot of wrestling stuff up, and we went there to take a look. And next door they have that South Pasadena video store is awesome.
So if you remember Kyle Kuthka, who is the person who co-directed the Horror Movie Night pilot with me.
Okay.
He lived in Pasadena, and one of the last times I came to hang out where I was hanging out with you, he picked me up from your house for a day, and we went to Pasadena to go to that video store, and then he showed me where the Michael Myers house is, like all the different Halloween.
Thanks for the
spots
invite,
were.
Matt. Thanks for the invite,
Listen,
Kyle.
John,
Because
I have
listen,
other friends besides you. When
I want to tag along, and I was like, when Matt comes back out here, I should take him. But you know what? You've already been out here. Go enjoy your own. You know what? Go bankrupt somebody else.
Listen, let's talk about the fact that I had a friend. He's a better friend now than when I was in LA. I'd never met him before. He was a dude on the internet that I had interviewed for the podcast. He was willing to drive from Pasadena to Los Angeles, pick up a stranger, drive back to Pasadena, hang out for a few hours, and then drive back to Los Angeles, drop me off and return to Pasadena.
Pasadena's Los Angeles. All right, pal. Don't act like he's a saint. Okay, pal.
It's
all right.
Listen,
I mean, it's not.
Plus, I was gonna say it doesn't matter where in Los Angeles traffic. It's a 30-minute drive, no matter how you cut it.
Yeah. I mean, John, I've met him on the internet, and I did not meet John until 2 months ago watching this Unearth movie.
Friendship. So,
and Geekscape is the movie comes out this week. We're recording on the 5th. It comes out on the 6th. Like this is the movie you got to watch this week because I'm guessing you already watched that Tomorrow War. But honestly, like if you're a horror fan, you're probably gonna want Unearth instead of Tomorrow War. So let's go with Unearth.
Slow burn. If you like a slow burn, like in the 70s throwback style.
I'm wearing my alien hat right now, and that's one of my favorite get to know the characters movies. Speaking of the 70s, we got to talk a little bit about the news that just went down before we started the show. We lost Richard Donner. Richard Donner, director of one of my favorites of all time, and I still think the first 30 minutes of this movie is the best superhero footage ever put to any footage. Richard Donner passed away today, and he lived a good life. He was 91. Let me carry the one. Yeah, he was 91, and I guess my first Richard Donner movie was Superman, but honestly, Superman and then Superman 2, but I mean, from the Goonies, Lethal Weapon 2, which is arguably better than Lethal Weapon 1. I know
I need to give a shout out to obviously the combination of being a horror fan and running a Christmas podcast.
Oh,
Scrooge.
baby. Just watched it in December again.
It's
It's
perfect
fantastic.
horror comedy. It is so good. It might be this is a weird sentence, but it's Geekscape. It's right behind the Muppets for the best adaptation of the Christmas Carol. Like,
we just watched Scrooge in December, and
the
I
Danny
had
Elfman score is insane.
The thing is just
movie.
incredible. But Richard Donner is just one of these directors that even when he wasn't active, his wife Lauren Schuler Donner was a huge part of the X-Men series. I think it's his daughter. It's his daughter. The whole time we're just, I mean, it just feels like he was also, what's the name of this Twilight Zone episode he directed with William Shatner? Nightmare at is it 9,000? No, where he sees the gremlin on the wing.
30,000. Sorry, Nightmare at
30,000 feet. Like, that is classic. He directed that classic Twilight Zone episode.
Well, I mean, even if we're gonna dig even deeper, like horror director a little bit. Obviously, Scrooge falls into that horror category, but did the first Omen movie. He was the executive producer on The Lost Boys, as well as the Tales from the Crypt movies, Bordello of Blood and Demon Knight, which I think are both really fun movies. And then executive produced the first X-Men movie. He also executive produced X-Men Origins Wolverine. We won't.
You know what? You can't hit all of them out of the park, friends. All right.
I even think his last movie, I don't remember it being super well received, but I thought 16 Blocks was a really fun movie.
And there are people who will argue is the best Bruce Willis performance.
Yeah. Him and Mos Def are fantastic in that movie.
Yeah. So Lauren Schuler Donner was married to Richard Donner. She is 19 years younger than him. So I'm sorry about all the confusion about whether or not she was his daughter, but this is Geekscape. Jonathan's made many mistakes. Please don't cancel me later on. And I also remember Lauren Schuler Donner as I think I was at a test screening for a film at Universal that we were working on, and they told us to turn off all our phones, and I put mine on vibrate, and it was not good enough for her. She was sitting next to me. And I put it on vibrate, and as I put it on vibrate, it vibrates, and she goes, "Doesn't sound off to me." And I was like, you know what?
I respect that.
Those first two X-Men movies were pretty good. I will turn it off now.
John, I mean, I've actually never seen this movie, but I have a feeling it's a film that you grew up on. I mean, also was the director and producer of Lady Hawk.
Lady Hawk is fantastic. And Lady Hawk is also an example of a movie that is a fantasy film with a modern score. Lady Hawk is great. I mean, I don't know if you're a fan of Lady Hawk, John.
I don't think I've seen it.
So
it's
I Matthew Broderick,
the name, but I don't think I've ever seen this either.
It's Matthew Broderick and and so like he's like a little thief. He runs around the castle and stuff like that. So you've got the lady of the castle, Michelle Pfeiffer, and she's not going to marry this wizard. So the wizard curses her because she's actually in love with you're gonna kill me for this one bad guy in Blade Runner. The actor.
Rutger
Hauer. Rutger Hauer. So Rutger Hauer, I think, is like a knight and falls in love with, like, I think the queen, Michelle Pfeiffer. So Michelle Pfeiffer and Rutger Hauer love each other, but this wizard curses them and says, "Hey, you can't be with me." He's like the original OG neckbeard, right? And he's like, "If you can't be with me, you can't be with each other." So he curses her to be a hawk during the day and he to be a wolf during the night. And so whenever they're human for like 10 seconds during dusk and dawn, and they'll never be together. And somehow they secret this
from dusk till dawn.
Yeah. So they can't be together. One's always a wolf or one's always a hawk. And so Matthew Broderick helps them break the curse. And Lady Hawk's great. Matt, you would love Lady Hawk.
I'll add that on my list.
In the story does the sword play? Because the sword takes up most of the poster.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be some swords swinging. I mean, even like some of his lesser movies were still fun. Like Maverick with Mel Gibson is fun. And speaking of sword swinging, Timeline was the movie they did with Paul Walker where they went back in time the same way I'm going to go back in time to the late 90s to stop Matt from discovering horror movies. Like, those are all fun movies.
I
you
like
said
Assassins
timeline.
and Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah, he
like
did
Assassin.
a conspiracy theory with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts, and then
Mhm.
Assassins. I saw Assassins in the theater, and it still gave us my favorite Antonio Banderas meme.
He also did. I mean, we won't give him too much crap for this, but he also made the film that aged terribly and didn't age well when it came out, The Toy, starring Richard Pryor.
Yeah, you know what?
But then he followed it up with Goonies, so that was a good comeback.
He's like, I thought that one was for the kids. No, this one will be for the kids.
Yeah.
Here's
I mean,
Goonies.
Did he also, by extension, by doing the Goonies, did he also direct the Cyndi Lauper music video for Goonies Are Good Enough?
Maybe.
Yes, he did.
Oh, it says it, huh?
Because
he's like, Lou Albano, go crazy in the kitchen.
Yeah. Oh man, everybody's in there. Hot Rod pops up. It's like every heel in 80s wrestling is in that Goonies music video. It's great.
Yeah, so I love Richard Donner just for that. He definitely came from like the remnants of a studio system where he was doing a mix of different genre films. And so when he did get to the 80s, when it was the heyday of the blockbuster, and he was making blockbuster movies like Lethal Weapon, he was still doing different genre stuff. He still went on and did a Western. He still went on and did like a fantasy movie like Lady Hawk. Yeah, Richard Donner was the man. And those first two Superman movies. Yeah.
Great filmography. 82 directing credits. I mean, and he's all across the board, like you're saying. Like, that's really, respectable.
Mm-hmm.
So not too many built like Richard Donner, for sure.
And people love that Superman 2 that is the Richard Donner cut, not the Richard Stanley cut. People love it's a Richard Stanley.
I don't know if it's Richard Stanley. That's
it wasn't
Island
it
of
wasn't
Dr.
Matt.
Moreau.
It was Island of Dr. Moreau. It was Hard Day's Night.
One second.
That director. Yeah, I got you. Richard Lester. Richard Lester. Yeah. So I think Superman 2's good. There's parts that I prefer to Superman 1, but the first 30 minutes of Superman 1 is the Mario Puzo's script, and just how economically they get from Krypton to Earth and have the Smallville sequences and Pa Kent dies. That is the best superhero 30 minutes of any film, anytime. I think that the Norman Rockwell looking Smallville and just those frames that he was using, like the wide shot of Martha Kent and Clark standing there with the farm in the background, that's a painting. And they don't treat superhero movies like that anymore. They treat them as genre affair, and he didn't do that with at least the first 30 minutes of Superman. Once they get to Lex, it gets a little silly, but those first 30 minutes are fantastic. And to think that they basically shot Superman 1 and 2 together is amazing. I would love to see those movies cut together and whatever they were supposed to be.
I mean, I'm sure that there's tons of information out there, but I always knew that like Richard Donner was removed from Superman 2, and I knew that someone new came in.
Richard Lester.
Then, I don't really know who that is. I just looked at his IMDb credits, and how did that guy become the person that they were like, hey, do Superman 2, you crushed it on those Beatles movies.
Yeah, you crushed it on a hard, and I think Hard Day's Night's cool. And what's cool about I'm not gonna knock Richard Lester, because you still have directors, doing, like if you watch the beginning of Trainspotting, that's Hard Day's Night. Like he's still doing some pretty great stuff, but how he gets a Superman 2 movie, I don't know.
I was like looking at that, I'm like, there is nothing, like, at least for the
Richard
most
Donner
part,
shot a lot of Superman 2.
Yeah, like
he shot
just
a lot
think,
of it.
Like, even with the current modern day Marvel system, right? They are farming a lot of these like small indie filmmakers or up and coming filmmakers, but like the connective tissue makes sense. You're like, of course James Gunn is going to do like a Suicide Squad or a Guardians of the Galaxy, because that like totally fits into like his start at Troma and the types of movies he made leading up to that. Like, you could have fun with that. I don't see how you're watching like Help and you're like, I think this guy is ready for a Superman movie.
I would be interested to find out what percentage of Superman 2 he ended up directing.
He
Because
just went to an
did
editing room
Superman
and just...
3 after it.
Yeah, he
so.
did Superman
Yeah.
3 right after, which is
and
the
then the
worst of
wheels came off the bus.
Oh, for
So
sure.
on that one,
Superman 4 is a blast, though. When Canon got their grubby little hands on it, and they're just like,
so
let's get really ridiculous.
I think the story with Christopher Reeve was, we'll let you direct it if you do it. And because Christopher Reeve was like, guys, I think I'm done. Superman 3 that was some bullshit. And I think they were like, hey, you want to direct, we'll let you direct Superman 4. And he's like, okay, well, I'm a lefty liberal, so let's just have it like anti-nuclear war. And he throws a bunch of nukes into the sun, and then Nuclear Man shows up, and they're like, well, okay.
I think
That's
one
fair.
of the few times that I can think of, and you're gonna think I'm crazy, but I'm actually very serious about this.
Okay.
One of the few times where they were like, look, you can direct it, star of the movie, so long as you do it, that actually turned out to be a really good movie was Psycho 3, where they let Anthony Perkins direct it, is a shockingly effective.
And Psycho 2 is not good. Is what you're
Like,
saying. I haven't watched Psycho 2 or 3.
no, Psycho 2 is
Same.
very good. Psycho 2
Okay.
is extremely good. Like Psycho 2, I think people give it a lot of shit because obviously it's not going to be better than Psycho.
Sure.
But the premise of Psycho 2 is fascinating because the concept is, I think it came out in like 80, maybe 84, something like that, like X amount of years after
Decades.
the first Psycho. Yeah, decades after. And the concept is like, from the time of Psycho to Psycho 2, Norman Bates has been getting consistent therapeutic help. And he is like completely a normal guy released back into society. And it's about how no one trusts him. And people are trying to fuck with him to make him go back to being a killer so he can get locked up again. Because no one trusts have it. And it's like this really deep, like psychological movie about like how
That's
we
number
treat
2?
Yeah, that's part 2. And then 3 is just like a straight gore fest, but it's a good time. 4 is him just calling into a radio station and telling his origins of how he became a serial killer. It's really bad.
I
But
had
it was
no
Mick
idea
Garris.
there was a
Mick
Psycho
Garris did
2.
that one.
I knew there was a Psycho 2 and 3 because the Anthony Bates covers in those mom and pop video stores. I was like, oh, but I never watched past Psycho because it's.
I mean, it's a masterpiece. You're not going to improve upon it.
We were somewhere and they were showing that tennis clip from Strangers on a Train, and I was like, we got to watch this movie. It's so good. Well, Geekscape this is why we have you here listening. We want you all to go support John's movie. John's been a supporter of mine since years before Geekscape. This guy, like, you sent me these emails saying you enjoyed my movie. It meant the world to me, John. Like, broke, couldn't get arrested. I mean, I pretty much started Geekscape and started podcasting because I couldn't get arrested out here for my stories. So I started podcasting and building it from the bottom up. But like emails like yours, and there weren't a lot of them, were like, those were things that really meant a lot for me, dude. So having you on the show and supporting you on your first feature film, and like, this is great. This is really cool. I'm super proud of you, man. I'm super proud of you for making this. And I don't think it'll be another 8 years till you make another one.
Yeah, I hope not. We got a few irons in the fire now, so yeah, fingers crossed.
Co-directing again, just to make sure that the gate is clean, or like, you know.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You enjoyed the directing with Dorota.
Yeah, definitely.
It's good to have some, you know, if you're the guy who's like, okay, what's this mean? There's got to be somebody who's like, yo, is that even in focus, dog? Like, hey, I think the dolly skipped a little bit on that last one. We got to do it again.
I need to be kept in check.
Yeah, just pure enthusiasm, and let's do the art. It's like, oh, let's do the art, but there's also some commerciality that we have to keep. We still got to be professionals. That's great. And you think you know what that project is, or those next couple projects are, John?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing one through COVID, and there's a couple other people writing some stuff too. So yeah, there's some options. We'll see. Be pitching them here real soon. So.
What's the best place for people to find you, so that you can stay up to date with what John's doing? I know I'm going to stay up to date with him. I've been hanging on this dude's coattails for 15 years. So.
And ditto, man. I want to see the feature. I want to see what's next.
Cool. We can talk about it after we go off the air.
Okay. So the Unearth movie is it's usually Unearth movie for like Facebook and Instagram. On Twitter, it's the Unearth movie, and then we're Lyons Den Productions is our production company. It's Lyons with a Y, like my last name. So yeah, if you want to check out more about the film, unearthmovie.com up here on the screen. It's out on all the major platforms tomorrow, and Lyons Den Productions for the overarching company. Yeah.
Dude, we're excited. And John, if you need anything from us, dude, like I mean, dude, it took 15 years for us to meet, but the truth is like we ended up finding ourselves in parallel paths.
I was so excited when you came walking in.
But you were in your element. Oh, you know, you had the actors there, you were doing a Q&A. Like I was like, hey, John, just love you, man. Hug. You know,
it was just cool to see like humans, you know, like
yeah,
it was a weird thing, like doing a Q&A and masks. And I don't know if you remember, Jonathan, but somebody ran out. I think it was the screening you were at. Were you at the first or the second?
I was at the first, the one in North Hollywood.
The person that puked on the wall that ran out of the. Did you see
Yes.
that?
No, I didn't see the puking. What I did see when I was leaving the theater was the poor Lemley employee who was shaking she had to shake the powder onto the vomit.
Yeah, it was
to
bad.
do it. You know what? No, it goes back. We were talking about Hitchcock earlier. He's the same dude who'd be like putting the stretchers in the theater to tell people, or like to have nurses on duty and be like, "Oh, this movie's so scary.
John,
You're gonna get sick."
Confusing Hitchcock
Yes, I
for
am.
William Castle.
I am. Only one of them was played by John Goodman. I very much am.
What a masterpiece matinee is.
Yeah, note. John Goodman played William Castle. Yeah, go see Matinee. John Goodman plays William Castle, who would do things like put buzzers under the seats and things like that. But I thought you know what? In all honesty, John, I thought you hired somebody to be like,
are you going to promote that on the movie?
You gotta say
so
it.
Horrifying.
I mean,
someone
you gotta do it
during a screening.
I mean, I don't know how you felt, Jonathan, but that was the first time I had seen it in a theater too, with the sound, and really, like, it is intense.
There's a sequence in the movie that made me ill, but it didn't make me want to puke. I mean, it takes a lot to make me puke, man. I'm dead inside. But there's stuff in the movie Geekscape is like they're drinking water from a fracking well. Their insides aren't going to stay healthy forever, and that's part of the horror. And I don't want to spoil stuff for you Geekscapists, but I like kind of what happens as far as the horror goes. It made me ill, but
that was the first image that popped into my head, that scene, and I think it's probably the scene that the person ran out and vomited on.
I'd forgotten about the vomit, man. What an endorsement.
Everything about the film was that image, kind of what I wanted to say.
What an endorsement that somebody ran out of your movie and puked all over the side of the wall. I had forgotten about that.
Like, but we were so happy. Like Adrienne and Allison and Brooke and I were like, "Oh my god, that's so amazing!" And then we saw the Lemley employees and they're like screaming, guys.
Yeah, that woman was shaking the powder onto the vomit to make it. John, thank you so much for being on the show, dude. Geekscape is go support Unearth. It's that's it. Unearthmovie.com. That's where you can watch the trailer and then look on all your VODs and all this stuff and watch the movie. I think you'll like it. But yeah, John, thank you so much, dude. And the Lyons Den Productions. Look him up. He's your friend.
Nice
Matt.
to meet you, Matt.
Nice to meet you, John.
Yeah, fellow PA horror enthusiast.
Dealing with for 15 years. So
good to hear all the deaths out there in Easttown have relaxed a little bit.
I'm holding it down. I'm the Matt of Easttown. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Geekscape. So we're gonna be back next week with the Geekscape 600. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're putting the whole thing together as a multiple podcast stream. So like a rock show, there's gonna be openers and then the Geekscape 600. But before we get
Geekscape gives.
Yeah, we're going to be starting a blood drive. We're going to start a blood drive for a month in memory of our friend Chris Ellis. And we're going to use the Geekscape Gives hashtag so that y'all go out and get selfies of yourself giving blood. And we have a little video that we made. There's all sorts of stuff happening next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. So subscribe, find us on all your favorite podcatchers, and we'll catch y'all next week. For Matt and John, peace and don't hate, create.